Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to our Signpost Series webinar this morning. This is our first webinar of 2023, and my name is Andy Boland, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so as we look at another issue relating to farming and the environment. I'd like to also mention and acknowledge the support that we get from our partners in this series: Dairy Sustainability Ireland, Food Drink Ireland SkillNet, and the National Rural Network. Now, this morning, some of you may think we're departing, and we have done in the past, for a different type of subject outside of environmental sustainability, but very important as well in the whole area of social sustainability, and very, very important, probably one of the most important topics that we could talk about. And it's good that we're starting the year on it, is health and safety. And I'm delighted to be joined by two colleagues, Dr. David Meredith and Dr. John McNamara, colleagues that I've known and worked a good bit with in the past, and they're going to talk to us really about the whole area of health and safety this morning. I'm also delighted to be joined by a colleague of theirs, Mohammed Drazi, and he's going to help us with some of the questions. He's working on a project that David will tell us a little bit about as we move through the presentation. And very kindly, Noel Meehan is also joined us, and he's going to give us a handout as well with Mohammed on the questions. So, gentlemen, you're very welcome, and thank you for taking the time and effort. And maybe some people are still on holidays at the moment, but thank you for taking the time and effort and putting together your presentation so early in the year. And maybe you would begin, David, and John afterwards, by telling us a little bit about yourselves, what you do in Teagasc, and indeed maybe your journey within health and safety.
Thank you very much for that, Andy, and Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to everyone who's joined us. Clearly, there's lots of people who aren't on holidays. I see there's 118 people here today, so that's fantastic. So yeah, I'm David Meredith. I work in the Rural Economy Development Programme within Teagasc, and the main focus of my work there is on issues of farmer safety and farmer health as well. In terms of the journey into that, it all started, as it frequently does, with a phone call from John many years ago asking if I could look at some data, and that led to me becoming progressively engaged with research in this area, resulting in a few years ago, we secured a very large grant from the Department of Agriculture for a project called Be Safe. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And that in turn gave us a platform to lead a successful bid for EU money. And that project kicked off a couple of days ago, and will run for the next 4 years. And it's the largest EU grant ever for farm safety research. So it's €5 million over 4 years. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of my presentation. So, John?
Great. No, again, Happy New Year to all, and thank you for having us to talk about health and safety as it applies to social sustainability. I'm Teagasc's lead in the Knowledge Transfer Directorate on Health and Safety, meaning that I seek to get advisors and trainers and those to include health and safety in our work. And I also communicate messages strongly to farmers. Now, I do applied research along with David and with a number of colleagues. I have been active at a European level for a number of years, and I was vice chair of a European cost network. I have been an adjunct associate professor at UCD in health and safety, and have been delighted to develop a health and safety module there at UCD, and indeed in other colleges, UCC and UG as well. My journey began, I think, in health and safety the day I started. I joined the Department of Agriculture, and I was assigned to Kildalton College as a machinery teacher. So very quickly I realized that, unless you were very careful, teaching machinery, that accidents could happen and that. So when the 89 Act came in, I became Teagasc's Health and Safety Officer at that stage. Thank you.
Okay, John. So, John, I think you're beginning the presentation. You're the lead presenter, so you're going to be our presenter, and David is going to row in on your presentation. So John, if you could share your presentation with us, and we'll get the ball rolling. Thanks. Yeah, we're seeing you fine.
Is it up there?
Yeah, perfect.
Right, I'll take about 15 minutes. Occupational health and safety for sustainable farming is the title of my talk, and it relates very closely to UN goals on sustainability, and goal 3 is about good health and good well-being. So I'm not talking in a vacuum. There is a big international context to what I'm talking about. Right, the first slide, and I think, this is a point that is very easy to make, that health and safety has huge consequences for anyone affected. There's the pain and suffering and tragedy involved. You see Mr. Norman Bradley, a farmer from around Carlow area there, and the consequences are self-evident. Now moving on, we do health as well as safety, and health has been described as an accident in slow motion. So health is a big issue also, but we're not going to say too much about it today, just give headlines. Now, we've done lots of research over many years, and that indicates that that disability arising from poor health and safety leads to all sorts of problems. At a business level, economic income is reduced by 22%. People having to get out of off-farm income as well. Now, we tend to emphasize the human side of safety, but it has huge business consequences. Now, everyone should be involved in health and safety, and apart from Teagasc, I just want to state a number of agencies. You have the Health and Safety, which is oversees the safety, health and welfare legislation and guidance. Teagasc has a joint agreement to work with the health and safety. There's a sub-board or an advisory committee to the HSA, the Farm Safety Partnership. I represent Teagasc on it, and there is a National Farm Safety Action Plan 2021-2024. Now, the Department of Agriculture is a huge player, and there is a minister with special responsibility for farm safety, Minister Martin Hayden. Now, the department include health and safety, where feasible, and that in schemes and supports and programs. And also they have funded EIPs, and indeed, as David has said, they have funded a considerable amount of research in health and safety. And then you have Origin Green Borbia, they have health and safety measures in their schemes, which is extremely positive as well. So I'll just move on to Teagasc now and talk, where do we come from? We have a statement of strategy, which is our working document, it's our plan of action as well, where we have a goal, we have an overarching goal to make sustainability, front and center, and to goal 1 there is to support improvements in farmers' living standards and well-being. And then, there is a measure that we describe in the measure, goal 1, what we're going to do. But basically, we adopt the One Health and the total health models. Total worker health means that we integrate safety and health. One Health means that health of livestock, health of humans, farmers are integrated. So we integrate all of those issues into our advice. Now, a few key issues around health and safety in agriculture. There's a huge number of farmers in Ireland, 135,000 farms, and about 300,000 people at risk. Farmers are predominantly self-employed, and they tend to take risks, I have to say, and there's a difference between self-employed and working for a company where you're under somebody else's control, and I'd like to emphasize that. In the scientific literature, farm safety and health has been described as a wicked problem. meaning that the solution has many components at various different levels, which we can speak about later. Now, accurate risk communication is crucial, and that's what we seek to do in Ireland. Two slides here: a tractor, getting knocked down by a tractor and getting attacked by a cow around calving time are two huge issues in Irish farming. Now, here is a graphic which kind of shows, farm management in practice. Now, the first pictorial up there shows lots of different activities on a farm. It's easier to show the negative, but you can see lots of hazards there. But I have to say, safety should be seen as a positive issue, and there are a lot of things to be put right and to be kept right on farms. Now, Teagasc advisors, in one study we did, a lot of them told us farmers forget health and safety when the pressure is on. So work organisation is a close relation of health and safety management. Now, an English study has shown that 45% of farmers are planners, that they're good guys. 14% they're pragmatists, meaning that they mightn't have the paperwork exactly right, but they're okay, they've done it right. 18%, strangely, are risk takers, they like risk, and 23% are unclear, meaning that they need ongoing support. They're not quite sure what to do next. Now, we have done research in Ireland broadly similar to that, which we'll be unveiling later. Now, approaches to effective health and safety, and there is a famous 3E approach which has worked in industry, but not so much in agriculture. And it's engineering, in other words, physical controls. You educate people on the human factor side, and you enforce both internally and externally, giving a safe environment. Now, I believe, in a company, you can put all that model together, but in a farming situation, it depends on the farmer to put it all together. Now, before I leave, I'd like to say, what is an accident? But fundamentally, it's an impact of energy, be it a bull or a bale or whatever, on the body, or loss of bodily function. Now, and the key controls are behavioral approaches, which are the quick win, and you must have them, and also improving the physical environment. Now, just to show you what's happening in Irish agriculture with data, and we've taken a long-term view here based on what work I've done with David Meredith. And I look at the two brown arrows first, and and this is a rolling average, for a 3-year period up to 2019. But if you look at it, the chocolate brown arrow and the dark brown arrow, they're from 55 upwards, and those figures are increasing, year on year. Whereas the maroon under 55 and down are decreasing. So age is a definite factor in farm safety, fatal accidents in Ireland. Now, looking at non-fatal accidents, here is the graphic, and it shows that, and this is based on NFS data, and it's for the previous 5 years. It shows that dairying has the highest level of non-fatal accidents, followed by tillage and then sheep. Now, the trend, what's happening in trends, we've been doing this work, in fact, since 1992, and basically the green line there shows livestock accidents, and they are going up and up. The next line is machinery. They came down, but in the last piece of work we did have gone up again. And then you have trips and falls. I'm glad to say they came down on the last occasion. And then you have other accidents such as chainsaws and that. And, they're all out there in the industry. They were quite high the last time we did it. Now, we have done this survey last year as well, but on a slightly different basis. It's on the basis of just 1 year recall, and we found that 4,500 accidents occur each year, and about half of them, 46%, either require hospitalization or a 3-day stay in hospital or more. And the key issues are there: livestock, trips and falls, machinery, and that. I'm glad to say machinery was down and that. Now, in the enterprises, sheep showed up as one having a high level of accidents, followed by dairy. Now, we're following up on this study, and the level of seriousness of the accidents. We're studying that, and we will be releasing data on that next. Now, where do you go to get information? Here you have the risk assessment document. It's sent to all farmers. It's basically the legislation in practice. It's to gain action, really, and it's got good graphics. It's got great pictorials, and it's got very sharp text. And then you have a hazard sheet, and going with it, you have an action sheet. And that is the key issue, to focus people on taking the right actions. So this covers all the activities on a farm, and it focuses farmers on taking action. Now, I did my PhD in this area, so I know a good bit about it, but farmers filled out the document to a limited extent. The hazards they identified, were physical hazards such as machinery and buildings, slurry, tank covering and that, but there was little in it on certain hazards, particularly children, older farmers, health and other areas. But now, a key finding was that farmers, and there were about 40% in the study, farmers who implemented what they specified had high standards of health and safety. And the other point being is that adopters had a lot more done than they had written about in their risk assessments, and what they were doing was ongoing. They were doing, they were making amendments to hazards the whole time. So the key message is ongoing adoption is needed. Now, I don't want to talk about health and safety. It's a big field. We can come back another day and talk about it. But farmers are in poor health also. And this work is by Dr. Breda Smith, and I congratulate her. Professor Smith is now the Chief Medical Officer for Ireland and that. But this is her MD thesis. Work, and circulatory diseases were 5 times higher than for blue-white collar workers, cancers 3 times higher, and injuries, the main component of that category, were 7 times higher. Here below at the bottom, you see a good colleague of mine, Willie Penrose, promoting health checks with us at the ploughing match. And here we have Dr. Diana Van Doorn, who I'm delighted to say will be awarded her PhD next Thursday for her work on, improving cardiovascular disease, research to improve cardiovascular health among farmers. Right, I just want to quickly move on and talk about the priorities in Teagasc, and I just want to hit the highlights. And the first one is we want to communicate with farmers. We want to give leadership, good, reliable information, working with the HSA and all partners. We do that by press releases, publications, social media, and very importantly, our events and that. Education, we are the training authority for agriculture, and it's very strongly included in all our training. And we have about 3,000 we have about 3,000 students involved, each year. We have a key health and safety module, and it's included in all modules and all practical training. We are delighted that the Minister, Minister Hayden, and the Department of Agriculture provided funding to us to buy a suite of 22 simulators, 21 in fact, 18 machinery and 3 equine, and I believe that these will improve vastly our training offering in the whole area of machinery safety. We do half-day training with farmers around the country for anyone who wishes to avail of them, and these are TAMs required. At advisory level, and here you have Minister Hayden and the Minister Harris, the Minister for Higher Education and Skills, at one of our events. But all advisors, we wish them to include health and safety in their work. With specific KPIs. We don't want to be long-winded. We want to be specific and short, focused and positives. And very importantly, we want to include work in our events and our discussion groups. And we want to integrate with other components of our advice, such as time management and workload management. Now, all of that work that we do in KT is based on the evidence-based paradigm which Teagasc operates. We operate a research to KT model. We've open access to all our work. We've no secrets. Everything we do is in the public domain. I'm delighted to say we have upped our ante in the last number of years due to Department of Agriculture, DAFM funding. We have a grant there, and we also have won a major EU H2020 contract, Safe Habitus, which David will talk about. Now, I just want to finish that we've been doing research for many years, and we've many projects done, so we've a lot of knowledge. The two at the bottom are 2 projects currently in progress, one on supporting farmers with health, and the other is in livestock safety, so a master study. So basically, summary is that health and safety is a key part of sustainability, and that we're very active in the area. Now, without any further ado, I'll hand over to, sorry, I have some references there, but I'll hand over to my colleague, David Meredith.
Thank you very much for that, John.
Sorry, David, just remind people before you start, if they could use the Q&A function if they have any comments or questions. We have them coming in, but just to remind people that it's there and to use it. Sorry, David.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Okay, and thanks, John. So in terms of, I'm going to present a few slides that provide an overview of some of the farm safety and farmer wellbeing research that we've completed over the past 12 months. And this work is funded predominantly through the Be Safe project, which is the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, and also through the Teagasc Walsh Scholarship Programme. Walsh Fellowship Programme. And the new project that we have, Safe Habitus, I'll talk about in a few minutes, is funded through the EU Horizon Euro programme. So John, if you can move on a slide. So standing back and looking at several of the studies that we've finished in the past year, we went looking at what are influencing farmers and farm workers' safety practices on farms. And one of the things that really stands out is the importance of social influences or peer pressure. And what we see is that they're critical in shaping what many, but not all, farmers and farm workers and also advisors believe and how they act when it comes to the issue of farm safety. So what do I mean by that? What we see in the data that we've collected is that the farmers in general, and I'm talking in general about a whole population here, it's not every farmer, but in general, there is an expectation that farming is a risky business and accidents are to be expected. So in the academic language, we say that this is normalized, okay? Risk-taking then becomes normalized because that's what farmers do. But our data shows us that what's 50% or slightly more than 50% of farmers in Ireland believe that that is the case. there's another population out there, and it's about 25% of all farmers. They see other farmers and they think that those other farmers are taking risks, but they don't. And this is the important, and this is the positive piece here. So it indicates to us that there is a safety culture there, okay? It is developing. It's not the majority by any means, but it is developing. And this is really, really important if we're going to change how we communicate safety and how we make farming a safer occupation into the future. And part of this, and this is the key point to this slide, we need to start focusing on communicating clear messages that explain to farmers where they stand in relation to key safety behaviors. Okay, so this is the idea that if we think that everyone else is doing something, so if everyone else is speeding when they get in a car, well, we'll just accept that. But if we find out that, well, only 10% of people go over 10 kilometers an hour in a 50-kilometer-hour zone, we begin to realize that we're actually the outlier, that we are the exception. And this is, it's a very effective communication tool when people begin to understand where they sit in terms of their practices relative to the population as a whole. And this has been proven to be very successful in a whole host of other areas as well. And one of the key points here is that it communicates that not everyone behaves unsafely. So next slide, please, John. The other element here is that when John referred to farm safety being a wicked problem, because there's no simple solution to it, that the responsibility is distributed across a whole host of institutions, from the national level right down to the individual farmer and the farm household. So everyone has got to take action here. But in the research that we've been doing, what we see is that farmers themselves, and particularly people who are considered to be leading farmers, they need to stand up, they need to lead and highlight that safety is an important issue to them. And this isn't a case of lip service, this is a case of living it. And the importance of that rests in the fact that it sends a clear message to other farmers and also to farm consultants and farm advisors and other people who are interacting with farmers, that farm safety is an issue that should be given time and should be given consideration. And work that we did with advisors, we found that the advisors take their cues from farmers and are less likely to raise these issues, as in farm safety issues, if they believe that farmers are reluctant to discuss them. And this makes perfect sense from the point of view of, if you're a farm advisor, you need to be getting critical messages across, and you don't want to be getting someone's back up by raising issues that they really don't want to talk about. And as a consequence, we need farmers to kind of step into this space and say, yes, safety is important. And as John said, it's not all negative. So John, if you can move on to the next slide. One of the ways of doing that, one of the ways of bringing those conversations out, is to think about how do we share experiences, and to do so in a way that's non-judgmental. And this is sharing experiences of near misses or close calls, or maybe serious accidents that might have happened to other family members on a farm. And they might be an important means of farmers and farm workers of identifying solutions to some of the risks that they face on a daily basis. And this particular point comes from work that we've done with colleagues in UCD, and we undertook a very large survey of students. And what we found is that there's a whole group of students who are effectively risk averse. But when we dug into that a bit, what we found is that they were much more likely either to have direct experience of being injured on a farm themselves, or knowing of someone who is either seriously injured or killed in some instances. And their whole attitude and their perspective on farm safety was very different to students who hadn't had those experiences. So the thinking here is that if we can get people to share experiences and not from the point of view of being judgmental about, oh, so-and-so took a risk and they got caught out or something like that, but much more from the point of view of this happened, but if we did X, Y, and Z, we could prevent it happening again. And it's very much on that preventative side of things. So John, next slide, please. I'm moving into the area of farmer health here, and particularly farmer well-being. So the issue of stress in farming has become much more prominent in recent years. And indeed, the issue of stress in the general population has become much more prominent in recent years, as there's a growing focus on the challenges around mental health. And one of the key points to make here at the very outset is that stress is a feature of all occupations, okay, including farming. So farming isn't exceptional from the point of view that people experience stress whilst working on farms. Farming is different, though, in terms of there's a lot of things that farmers cannot control. Okay, so weather, markets, they're two huge issues that farmers have very little control over. And that uncertainty can cause a lot of stress. And we'll say in relation to weather-related issues, that has knock-on consequences as well. So it can impact on the financial performance of the business and the income that is generated and returned to the farm household as well. So you can get these individual stressors, but they begin to combine. And when they begin to combine, then they can become quite problematic. But standing back and going back to Diana Van Doren's work that John mentioned there a few minutes ago, roughly 10% of farmers experience poor well-being. Okay, so we undertook a very large survey. Diana undertook a very large survey of farmers. There was over 800 farmers in there, and asked them a sequence of questions, and those questions combined together to give us a score in terms of your overall well-being, and it ranges from very good to poor. And we find that 10% of the population experience poor well-being, and we're very confident in this figure overall. We did another piece of work, and this work was done by Alexis O'Reilly, and it's just about to be submitted for publication. And it looked at farmer well-being over the course of the pandemic. And what was interesting here is that there's a lot of work done on farmer stress. And when that work is done, it generally just looks at farmers. Okay, it doesn't compare farmers to anyone else. What Alexis O'Reilly has done is to compare farmers to other rural workers. And what we found is that stress amongst farmers increased during the pandemic. But interestingly, this means that farmers are now the same as other workers in rural areas. So their stress levels were lower to begin with and increased during the pandemic, such that they then became very similar to other workers in terms of the level of stress that they're recording. There's some preliminary work that has been done indicating that the levels of stress are declining again, but that is very preliminary, and we'll be working more in terms of establishing whether or not that is an actual fact. So next slide, please, John. I already mentioned the fact that there's a lot of stressors on farms. So stressors are causes of stress. So they include, and the main ones include money, weather, and workload. Other stressors include policy uncertainty and change as well. So and change in general, not just policy change. So we're talking about technology, availability of labor, how work is organized, the type of work that's done, and so on. What we see from Mary Brennan's work is that stress is more common amongst younger farmers compared to older farmers. And this is particularly true for those operating a dairy enterprise. farmers who continue to experience stress in older age are more likely to experience negative impacts on their health. Okay. And in general, individual stressors tend to be manageable for most. So if there's one thing causing stress, or maybe if there's a couple of things causing stress, that's okay, they're manageable. But it's where they begin to combine and you get multiple stressors. And some of these, they may be personal as well as related to the occupation. But where they come together, that can cause substantial stress. And you can go from coping to really struggling in a very short period of time. So this is where, we need to be very proactive in terms of ensuring that the right supports are available. And that those supports are accessible to farmers. And just in terms of looking ahead a little bit, a lot of recent commentary has focused in on how farming is now perceived within the popular press, in particular the media, but in general in terms of the population at large. And a sense within farming that it's been portrayed as being all bad. And the reality, of course, is that isn't the case. That farming produces a lot of very positive things that we all depend on every morning when we get up in terms of food. It produces a huge amount of economic activity in rural areas. And it maintains cultures and traditions that are really important to the country as a whole. But one of the things that we need to get a handle on, and there's relatively little work has been done on this so far, but it's to try and get an understanding of the impacts of media coverage and policy uncertainty on farmer well-being. It could be that, what we're seeing at this specific point in time are a number of issues coming together and that they will ultimately pass. And what I'm talking about here is the change to the Common Agriculture Policy and everything that comes with that. And at the same time, the introduction of the Climate Bill, which sets out targets for the agriculture sector. And these are legally binding, and we'll need to achieve those by 2030 and 2050. So we've got a lot of change coming together at one point in time. And we've heard from a variety of people, and this is commentary rather than research, but we've heard from a variety of people that this is causing a lot of stress for farmers. And what I'm saying here is that, well, we actually need to get a much better handle on whether that is temporary and will pass, or if this is something now that farmers are facing into the future as well. And if it is, then we need to do something about that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we might be able to do about that. So John, next slide, please. So one of the new projects that we have, and this is a project that I'm leading, and so I'm the overall project leader. It's called Safe Habitus, and the objective is to strengthen the farm health and safety knowledge and innovation system in Europe. And this is funded by the European Union through the Horizon Europe programme. It's worth €5 million over 4 years. And we've got 20 partners spread across 12 EU member states. And we will be, well, the project kicked off, in fact, on the 1st of January this year. So we'll go for the next 4 years. The type of work that we're looking at there relates to farm risk reduction and management. And John is leading that particular strand of the work. And then we're also looking at making farming a more attractive job. So that's where we're looking at issues around quality of life, improving farmer well-being overall. And that work has been led by colleagues in Slovenia. So this is the overall project. It was launched by Minister Hayden with us a number of weeks back, and that's the photo that you see there. And in terms of some of the benefits that this brings to us, well, in the first instance, we can take what we've learned here in Ireland and bring it to others around Europe. but equally we can learn from what others across Europe and indeed outside of Europe have been doing in this area of farm safety, and where applicable, bring those ideas back to Ireland and pilot them here. So I'm going to finish my presentation there, and if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to take them.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. John, you might stop sharing your screen now. Yeah, and welcome to Noel and Mohammed. And again, can I remind you to keep sending in the questions. John, just to go back to your presentation, you mentioned two things that are kind of struck me. One was the TAMS2 training, that's the farmer grant applications. And you just give us a little bit more about what farmers have to do and the type of courses. And also you mentioned about advisor and consultant training. Well, advisor training, which is consultant training, that is a requirement as well. Now, both of those are requirements. You might just elaborate a little bit on those.
Yes, and there is a question from Terence that I might link into it as well. Now, in order to draw down your TAMS grant, you were required to do a half-day course on health and safety, and it's based around the risk assessment document, completion of the risk assessment document. Now, we're seeking to get farmers to participate. Now, it was part of my PhD thesis, so I found that the risk assessment document was never meant to be just kind of handed out. It was meant to be included with training. So we found in my study, that it increased the level of action taken by farmers. So it is a very positive course. Now, I'd have to say farmers, especially farmers that would be in the, let's call them the unclear category, aka the UK study, coming in, they would say, oh, well, what's all this about, and blah, 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 health and safety. But we want to motivate farmers, and our experience going out the door of farmers, and we've measured this, it's in my research, are delighted with the course. They find it very useful, very practical, and it motivates them to pursue health and safety adoption on their farm, and of course to complete the risk assessment. Now, we don't just leave it at that. We want all our activities, events, and particularly discussion groups to include safety, and we have done research on that. Dr. Tracy O'Connor got a PhD with us a number of years ago, and we found that what farmers want there are short, focused, and positive messages, right? So that's that question. The second question, all FOSS advisors, these are advisors under the Department of Agriculture Farm Advisory Service, including Teagasc and consultants, and all have to do an online e-learning course on health and safety, and the deadline is imminent, so most people have done it. So anyone that hasn't, we'd encourage them to do it. I'd just like to take Terence's question about mandatory training of farmers there while I'm on the run, and I think that will be tested this time next year or even sooner. That there is mandatory regulations coming in for wearing a helmet while driving an ATV, and plus getting training to operate a quad. So that is mandatory, and that is coming down the tracks. But what is there at the moment is kind of incentivized training, to do the half day. It's incentivized in terms of you have to do it to draw down the TAMS and that. And I think that is a positive approach. Thanks.
And maybe David, just on, or Mohammed, either of you, just before I go over to Noel, the new project, that you're involved in, Safe Habitats, what do you see the big benefit of that from an Irish point of view? I know you'll get to see a lot of work in other European countries, which is very useful with any of the European projects that are involved in it, and presume they will likewise get benefit from what we're doing. And sometimes we often knock maybe what we're doing, but we're often doing as much, if not more, than a lot of people. But what would be the main benefits, do you think, that will come out of that project from Irish agriculture, in inverted commas?
Well, I think in going back to your point there, Andy, it actually gives us a platform to show exactly how much we've been doing in Ireland. And when we compare across Europe, I mean, Ireland is, stands out as making huge efforts in this area and having developed a lot of different types of approaches to try and improve things here. And what I mean by that, I mean, you've got the activities of the HSA in terms of safety campaigns and all of the media work that they would do around that, right the way down through organizations like Agri-Kids, which is, at the level of interacting with schools to highlight issues around farm safety. So when we compare Ireland to most other European countries, I mean, we're very proactive in this space. So it gives us, a real opportunity to highlight what it is that we've been doing here, and for other people to learn from us. There's a lot of benefits that are going to flow from this particular project, but I think from a very practical and one might say a very selfish point of view, it allows us to continue the work that we've developed over the past number of years and to get deeper into a number of questions and issues. So we'll have funding to appoint researchers and they will continue doing the work. The other aspect, though, in terms of it's all well and good doing research and publishing papers, but it's really all for nothing unless we're translating that into something practical that can be used either by farm advisors or farmers to improve the social sustainability of farming in Ireland. So there's a big focus on that element as well. From a more technical point of view, and this is, it might not be seen as being a particular issue with regard to most people operating within Ireland, but because of the way we collect the statistics. So basically, if a death happens on a farm, it's recorded as a farm death or farm fatality. And it doesn't matter who that happens to. Okay, so that's the way we go about it in Ireland. Equally, if you're undertaking work as a farmer and have a serious injury or fatality in a public area, such as on a road or off the farm itself, that too can be recorded as a farm fatality. So when we compare Ireland to a lot of EU states, we look like we have quite a high level or a high rate of farm fatalities in Ireland compared to a lot of other countries. But they count their fatalities very differently. And in the first instance, a lot of countries don't count anyone who's self-employed. So it's only if you're employed that you're counted as being in their statistics. And there's all sorts of issues around this, but it makes the figures look artificially low for those countries. So one example of this, and it's the work that John was involved in a number of years ago, it was found that France reported 1 farm fatality for 1 year, which, given the number of farmers they have, that's unrealistic. But it's because of the way they're using the statistics. And what we want to do is to highlight the need across Europe to effectively take the approach that we do in Ireland to count all of the fatalities, because unless we're counting them, we're not going to make progress. It's not going to be an issue. So that could be a very major outcome of this project if we're successful in really influencing how different countries across Europe count the injuries and fatalities that are occurring on farms.
That would seem a major anomaly, David, if you're talking about that level of disparity between different, if you like, for want of a better term, accounting systems or measurement systems. It does seem, to be honest, a little bit crazy, doesn't it? Noel, there's lots of questions there coming in. Do you want to?
I will, but I think, John, did you put your hand up there, John?
No, yes, I did. Yeah, no, I have been in Europe quite a bit over the years now, but one key difference is that, in Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, those kind of places, farmers actually retire, like by the age of 55, you're heading for the exit kind of door, and you know, you're retiring, you know, genuinely, and they do retire, right? And I think that leads me to Owen's question, you know, and Owen, you say that, you know, 5% of the population, 50% of the deaths, you know, and that is the case. And, you know, we must redouble our efforts, you know, but I'd have to say that, you know, and, you know, a lot of the deaths are due to older farmers, you know. Now, last year there was 12 fatal accidents, and 59% of those, you know, 7 of them were over the age of 65, you know. So I think there is a little bit of nuance needed comparing one sector with another. The other thing I'd like to re-emphasize just about, you know, the same figure, 59% were due around machinery. So risk communications is crucial. You know, it's being close to a vehicle or a tractor or interacting with a vehicle, that is the issue. And how our farmyards are designed is a big component of that. Thanks.
Noel, just before you go, it's just something that struck me actually going through the presentation as well. And John, you just mentioned it now, you know, the age of farmer. And is it as a result of the general age profile increasing, or is it as a result of older farmers are having accidents? Do you know what I mean? I mean, the general age profile of farmers are increasing, so you would expect a larger percentage, or sorry, they would, you know, put in a larger percentage into the pie, or is it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I can maybe give my answer and hand over to David.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a bit of both, you know, but you know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, David, but like, you know, farmers gain habits, including bad habits, dare I say it, at a younger age, you know, and then as one gets older, you know, one gets more vulnerable, let's put it like that, you know, both physically and mentally, so that the chances of an accident increase as one gets older. Now, there's all sorts of issues, you know, the demand for workers in the industry has increased, and older workers are getting sucked back into the workplace to do work that they mightn't have thought they would do. Just while I'm on the subject, we have a very good PhD funded by the department in UG, you know, Aswati Suranandran, you know, where she is studying the role of older farmers. Thanks.
David, you just wanted to make a comment there as well, did you?
Well, I'm just in general supporting what John has said. The issue isn't age, okay? The issue is the fact that we learn a set of practices at a very early age, and that's fine, you know, so long as we're young and agile. But as we age, we get a bit slower, and that's when the risks really begin to increase dramatically. And the reality is we also become a lot more fragile. And I'm speaking from personal experience here myself. So it's, you know, what might have caused a bit of a bruise in the past now becomes a much more serious issue in terms of broken bones or whatever it happens to be, or it could be a lot worse than that, of course. So it's really about changing the behavior or the practices and moderating that as we get older, and realizing that we can't do it all, that we aren't superhuman, and we all come to that realization at some point, but the trick is to ensure that we learn it early enough that it doesn't result in us getting a serious injury. But just very quickly, I see some of the questions there. There's a question around the health and safety EIP schemes that came in from Sinead, and certainly as part of the new project that we have, Safe Habitus, we would look to learn from them, because what they've done, for those who don't know, they've piloted a lot of different approaches across the country in different places, different types of farming systems, and taking a variety of different ways of trying to communicate and improve farm safety. So we'll definitely be looking into those as we go forward there.
No, sorry. Over to you.
Okay. So just two, I suppose we're nearly out of time now. So two very quick questions. The first one, I was interested in your comments around the importance of social influence or peer pressure on farmers, and what they think of each other. And then you're what on the spectrum, are you very safe or risk taker? Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that further for the audience as to how you're thinking behind it?
Sure, and I'm not sure Mohammed might want to come in on this as well, but very briefly, what we found is just over 50% of farmers thought that other farmers that they considered to be good or good farmers took risks, and therefore risk taking was normal. But we also found that about 25% of farmers didn't take risks, even though they too recognized that good farmers took risks. So in other words, whilst they looked out to the wider community and saw risk-taking taking place, it's not something that they did themselves. And that's really important in terms of it tells us that, there's a big group, 25% is a big group of farmers out there that are really developing a farm safety culture, where safety is an important issue for them. Mohammed, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me, and Happy New Year to everyone. And yes, actually, as David actually mentioned, we figured out maybe we were dealing with two main cohorts in relation to safety and actually from the cultural perspective. And we figured out we have in the community of farmers in Ireland a group of farmers that they behave safe and they believe that safety is a part of the culture, and a good farmers is actually farmers to take safety things because of the social views of those important others. So what is really important is to first figure out who are the important others in the local community and how we can engage them more in the type of education and tools we have in place in Ireland. Because as you know, and as John and David mentioned earlier, in Ireland, you have loads and many tools, educational tools, programs in place. So now we are thinking of that, how to maximize their impact on the farmers' behaviors and how to effectively target that culture. And interestingly, we also found a group of farmers that are somewhere in between. They are taking safety as a serious thing, but they need more social supports from those people in local communities, advisors, family members, the other peers, neighbors, So now we are thinking of that, designing a tool to help this group to get a bit closer to those who think safety is important. And then we will have at least maybe a large number of farmers in the community. As it happens, then we can expect that over a not really long course of time, but it actually takes time. Then we can see that the movement is happening. And we interestingly found that the movement has already started, but we need to accelerate this social, for example, things and the cultural things. And there is also another challenge, but as you mentioned, aging actually is here. So those farmers who are maybe older, so they have a really firm cultural aspect, but they're also affected. So this is also important because they are affected by the neighbors that are maybe the same age, but they have the different, for example, experience of near misses or stories or some things. So they're also affected. So we cannot actually, so this is a really positive things. We're also thinking of that. And hopefully now we found this, for example.
Okay,
3 groups, and we now have here, and now we are trying to maximize our impact and engage other people as well in the process of delivery.
Have we time for one more quick question?
Mohammed.
Yeah.
Okay, one more, Noel.
Quick question. So one in there, can the speakers comment on the impact of symptoms of poor well-being and stress on the farmer and the efficient and sustainable management of a farm? And can they also provide some recommendations to the farmer that might be experiencing these symptoms?
No, I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that question. Yeah, there's an abundance of evidence, like internationally, like that people under stress have increased accident levels. Indeed, I published a paper myself with people in UCG, Amelia Fury and Dennis O'Hora, Dr. Dennis O'Hora, a psychologist whom we work with. Yeah. So kind of a roadmap for stress. Well, the first thing is to recognize oneself as having it, and, stress, as David has said, very often can come from the farm workplace, workload, financial, whatever on the farm, poor health and safety conditions, the advisory service, FOSS, advisors, consultants, we're there to help farmers with that, right? Now, the other aspect is the healthcare side of it, stress and that, we'd encourage people to signpost people, to deal with their, health professionals in that regard. And I think overall, the whole business of discussion groups and social engagement is crucial in this self-management. Thanks.
Okay.
John, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've just gone a little bit over time, but just, to anybody who has sent in a question, all the questions, we do pull them together indeed every week and share them with our presenters for their own use, or indeed for future webinars, that we often take cognizance of some of the questions or comments that come in. John, David, Mohammed, Noel, and Yvonne Maher in the background, thank you all very much for putting our webinar together this morning. Next week, we have Professor Tommy Boland from UCD and the Lions Estate. And Tommy is has a difficult task. He's looking at the challenges of achieving sustainable pasture-based livestock production systems. So I do hope you can all join us again at this time next week. Finally, I'd just like to wish you all a very happy, peaceful, and indeed a safe, very safe New Year. Today is a particularly nice day in Irish tradition. It's Nollaig na Mán, so I hope all our women listeners all have a very nice and pleasant day, and might even drag the night and the weekend out of it. It's a good day to have Nollaig na Mán on a Friday. A reminder that the webinar is available as a recording, and David and John's presentations are also available on our website. We also do a podcast version, so you can download your podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. So it leaves me just to say a very happy and prosperous New Year to you all. Stay safe, stay farming, and see you all again this time next week. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.